Starting off in this location, on the off side of the scuttle panel, you can see this grille here. Now underneath there, you can see your load bearing member for this side, and you can also see the top of your suspension strut. Running from the off side to the near side, you've got this component here that's used to prevent water from going into the engine compartment via the scuttle panel. You can actually see the top of your suspension strut in more detail. You also have in this location two of your nuts that are used to hold the top of the strut to the load bearing member for this side. Moving down to this location, you can see your air filter box and your mass airflow sensor. This sensor is used to measure how much air is going into the engine. Moving further back in this location, you can see your electrical connector for your brake level sensor. You can also see your brake fluid reservoir tank and cap. This pipe leads to your turbocharger compressor housing. Now down in this location, you can see a washer fluid tank and neck, and below all that, you've got the tank. Moving up to this location, you've got this component here that is used to protect your bonnet release cable. To the right of that, you've got this adjuster here to allow service personnel to adjust headlight aim for this side. And you also have an electrical connector to control and power that component. Just behind that component, you've got one of the many wiring harnesses in the car. Wiring harnesses in a car are used to group multiple electrical wires together. You also have in this location your pipe that takes air from the front of the car to your air filter box, and you also have your electrical connector to control and power that headlight. Moving over to the right, you can see your high pressure air conditioning recharge point dust cover, and you also have your high pressure and low pressure air conditioning pipes. And you also have your variable valve timing control valve solenoid for the exhaust cam. You also have your wastegate diaphragm and your wastegate push rod that is used to operate your wastegate valve. This valve is responsible for controlling your booster pressure. Just behind your wastegate diaphragm, you've got another pipe here that's part of your positive crankcase ventilation. Now just behind that pipe, you've got your rocker cover. Up in this location, you can see your engine cover. On the engine cover, you've got TGI. TGI stands for turbocharged gasoline injection. You also have a cutout for your oil filler cap and a cutout for your dipstick. Underneath the engine cover, you've got your fuel rail, your free fuel injectors and your coil packs and other components. Moving down to this location, you can see your pre-cat O2 sensor. This sensor is used by the engine control unit to measure air-fuel ratios. You also have heat shielding that covers your catalytic converter, and just above there to the right, you can see your vacuum pump. This pump is used to supply vacuum to your vacuum brake booster. You also have a direction of rotation arrow and serial numbers on the part. Moving over to the right, you can see your boost pressure sensor. This sensor is used by the engine control unit to measure boost pressure. This pipe here takes air from the outlet of the intercooler to your throttle body. Just above that pipe, you've got your vacuum pipe that supplies vacuum to your vacuum brake booster. Moving over to this location, you can see your battery. The battery in this car contains grab handles to allow service personnel to remove the battery from the car. You also have on this 12-volt battery your negative post, your battery monitoring sensor, and a cover here that covers your positive post. Just behind the 12-volt battery, you can see your expansion tank. Now this expansion tank has your pressure cap, expansion line, and supply line that takes coolant to the engine. Near side of the battery, you've got this lid here that covers one of your power distribution centers. Just below the box, you can see two wiring harnesses going from it. Just in front of the box, you can see quite a few different components. For example, you've got a big wiring harness going from the box. You also have an electrical connector to power and control the other headlight. The 12-volt battery in this car is also covered by a heat blanket. One thing I forgot to mention about the 12-volt battery in this car is you also have a vent. Moving off-side to this location, you can see your upper radiator support and the top of the headlight module. Moving further right, you can see your slam panel and a cutout in the center of the panel for your safety latch. Moving to the right, you can see this component here. Now this component here stores your prop stick when not in use. Moving to the offside rear of the engine compartment, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you can see your master cylinder, your vacuum supply line to your vacuum brake booster, your vacuum brake booster, and a sensor here to measure how much vacuum is in the brake booster. You also have sound deadening on the bulkhead to reduce the noise of the powertrain from going into the cabin. Moving right from the previous location, you can see your map sensor. Just below the sensor, you've got your intake manifold. You also have, just above the intake manifold, your power electronics for your throttle body. Back in this location, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you've got a coolant line. You also have your 2 pipes that takes coolant to and from your heater matrix, one of your air conditioning refrigerant pipes, and other different components are in this location like your gear selector cable. Moving to the near side rear of the engine compartment, you can see both your high pressure and low pressure pipes for your air conditioning system. You also have your expansion valve assembly, and you have your low pressure air conditioning recharge point dust cover. Just below the expansion valve assembly, you can see one of your air conditioning pressure sensors. Now this sensor is used by the climate control ECU to measure the pressure in the lines. Underneath your expansion tank, you've got your ABS modulator. Now on the modulator, you've got the pump, your 2 brake lines that goes to and from your master cylinder. You also have your big electrical connector that connects to your ABS control unit. You also have your modulator block, and your 4 brake lines that goes to each wheel caliper cylinders. In this location, at the bottom near side of the engine compartment, you can see your drive shaft with constant velocity tripod joint, and you also have your drop link and anti-roll bar. One thing I forgot to mention is you've got one of your mounting locations for the subframe. Looking up from the previous location, you can see your near side chassis rail, your transmission mount bracket, and the bottom of your battery tray. Moving towards the front of the vehicle, you can see your transmission valve block assembly. Turning the camera to the left and forward, you can see your near side fog light module. Underneath the engine, you can see your spin-on style oil filter, your lower oil sump, your oil sump plug, your flex pipe for the exhaust, your torque converter housing, and transmission housing. Moving the camera up to this location, you can see quite a few different components. For example, you can see your transmission oil cooler. You also have your wiring harness for your post-cat O2 sensor. You also have your transmission selector and transmission control unit. Moving to the offside rear of the engine compartment, you can see your alternator and alternator pulley. You can also see your coolant holes, and you also have your stator windings. Now in this location here, you can see your steering rack with one of its boots, and you can also see the cover that covers your steering shaft assembly. You can also see some of your subframe. Moving to this location, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you can see your crankshaft pulley, you can also see your air conditioning compressor pulley, your tensioner pulley, and other pulleys. Moving closer to the offside crankshaft auxiliary belt pulley, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you can see your offside drive shaft and constant velocity tripod joint, and you also have your electrical connector for your oil pressure control valve. Thank you very much for watching my video, and goodbye.